A Very Pinkie Hearths Warming, written by Lucky Dreams. It was Hearths Warming Eve, and a young unicorn filly dashed through the streets of Ponyville. Her name was Sweetie Belle. She had a mane of vivid purple and brightest pink, and a coat of nearly white fur, although the expression on her face was a very big frown. "It's not too late. It's not too late. It's not too late," she said to herself over and over again, as though repeating the words would make them come true. "It's not too late. Oh, please don't let it be too late." "What's not too late, Sweetie Belle?" The voice was like sunshine in the gloom, a voice of candy canes and gingerbread horses, and of lights twinkling upon the hearts-warming tree. It was certainly the last voice Sweetie Belle had expected, and, to her surprise, she slipped in the snow and landed smack on her face. Thanks Celestia, the snow was thick that year, a freezing duvet spread over the cobblestone streets. Sweetie scowled as Pinkie Pie helped her back up. She glared at Pinkie's pink coat and pink hooves, and also her pink mane. It seems that even her words sounded pink. "Are you late for a party?" Pinkie said. "A super-duper hearts-warming spectacular?" Sweetie groaned. "Pinkie Pie, I don't have the time for this. I need to get to the shops." "Ooh," said Pinkie, bouncing into place behind Sweetie. "Let me guess, you're in a race against time looking for the last-minute gift. Oh, but there's 8.5 seconds left from now, and you finally realize that you're too late, and then comes a terrible panic and a dreadful guilt, and then..." Sweetie groaned. "Pinkie, I'm not in the mood." 8.5 seconds passed, and Sweetie Belle stopped in her tracks. It was as though her hooves had frozen fast to the ground. The wind nipped at her legs, her chest, and later around her face. Her horn was tingling unpleasantly, and snowflakes settled on her back. "Wait," she whispered. "What do you mean, too late? It's only 4 o'clock. "Silly filly," came Pinkie's pink reply. "It's Sunday. The shop's closed early this year." Sweetie Belle's frown grew wider, until she was 3/4 frown and 1/4 filly. It was Hearts-Warming Eve, but it was also the end of the world, and most importantly, it was a Sunday. Just how could she have forgotten that the shop shut early today? How could she have been completely and outrageously dull? Sweetie felt a nudge on her shoulder. She glanced up, and was shocked to discover that she wasn't the only one with tears in her eyes. Where once Pinkie had worn a century's worth of smiles on her face, now there was an endless frown. Where sunshine had once dazzled from behind her eyes, there lurked 100 shades of twilight misery. There was a lurk on Sweetie's stomach. This was Pinkie Pie we're talking about, who was laughter and joy in form of a pony. This was Pinkie Pie, who always smiled even though when the days were the darkest, and the nights were longest. Pinkie Pie didn't frown. They stood in wind-wailing silence for a while, 2 ponies alone in the blue darkness of a snowy street. Sweetie wondered what she would do next. Surely there had to be something. Something that she can get for her older sister? Some of Sweetie's own makeup, perhaps? Yet what would a grown-up mare want with a filly's makeup kit? What mare would be interested in Foal's nail varnish, a Foal's eyeliner, and a blusher for kids? It was a stupid idea. She knew. Maybe. Sweetie held her hoof to her chin and flicked her tail as she thought to herself, maybe she could make something for Rarity. A necklace? A painting? Yet between the school's hearts-warming play that evening, and the carols at midnight, there was no time for crafting or coloring. Her stomach was cold, and it had nothing to do with the bitter touch of the deep winter. It was as though she had feasted upon fear and melancholy. "Pinkie," she said, grabbing Pinkie Pie by the shoulders. "You've got to help me. What should I do?" If Sweetie had looked closer, and if she hadn't been caught in the dark claws of desperation, she might have noticed that, for the briefest of moments, for an infinite slice of a second, the corners of Pinkie Pie's mouth turned upwards. But the smile was a hummingbird fast, and Pinkie's frown returned. "Tell Rarity sorry. Granny Pie used to say that an apology was the most cherished present of all. So, say sorry. Then put the sorry in a box, wrap it up with a bow, and then place it under a tree." Sweetie pawed at the snow with a hoof. "Wait, how did you know the present was for Rarity?" she whispered, caught off guard by the bluntness of Pinkie's words. Once more, she didn't look hard enough. Had she looked, she might have noticed the spark in the mare's eyes, but she didn't notice, and she certainly didn't question Pinkie as the mare led her through the dark-drenched streets and the frost-frozen alleyways. "Oh, that was easy," Pinkie said. The way you cried? That was a sister cry, and I know all about sister cries, because they are the most special of all. You must be so happy to have a sister who can make you feel so sad, just because you didn't get her a present. Not helping, Sweetie said, through her gritted teeth. The two of them cut through a park, where shadows nested under the trees, and the gloom was thick. Sweetie shivered and moved closer to Pinkie Pie. Think, Pinkie, what's a good idea for a last-minute present? But why didn't you get one before? Pinkie replied. For the second time, Sweetie stopped in her tracks. She gaped at Pinkie Pie and marveled at the frankness of the words. The question had been wielded like a hammer. No, this wasn't the Pinkie Pie she knew. The Pinkie she knew would wove her words with kindness and joy. Normally, to be around her on a winter's night was to experience a fiery warmth, where all the world was cloaked in dark and cold. Sweetie stammered. Pinkie was relentless in her most unpinkiest onslaught. You had all week to get one, she said darkly. I know, because that's how long you've been off of school. Apple Bloom brought her sister the biggest, hugest, most massivest apple pie you ever saw, and you should have seen the cake that Scooter brought for Dashi. Hey, that's not fair, Sweetie said, as they trotted out of the park, then across town square, and then down another icy-coated side street. I was busy all week. Pinkie looked at her. She didn't blink. Oh? She said. Were you? That's news to me. Had Sweetie listened closer, she might have realized that, actually, Pinkie Pie didn't sound all that surprised by the news that she had been busy all week, and that she hadn't had time to buy Rarity a present. She might have noticed the deviousness of her words, the way Pinkie kept them on just the right side of playful teasing. Sweetie glared at her, but once more her ears dropped, and her horn felt like it was packed full of snow. Yeah, I was busy, okay? I get it. I'm a horrible little pony. What were you busy with? Pinkie asked. Well, I had to practice for a play tonight. I was Princess Platinum. I had songs and everything. Interesting. What else were you doing? They trotted down a street with some shops on it, then one with some houses. Other ponies passed by in the dark shadows wrapped in scarves and coats. Sweetie Belle paid them no notice, but she thought to herself, going over the last few days in her head. Well, she said, I helped Scootaloo pick out the cake, and then Apple Bloom with the pie. Can you believe that Scoots wanted to get Rainbow a book? A book! And Apple Bloom almost got AG a cake with oranges on it. She cleared her throat. They said, we want to try something new this year. It took ages to talk them out of it. Pinkie nodded. Uh-huh. What else? Sweetie glared at Pinkie Pie. What else? What a question! There was so much what else that Sweetie would scarcely know about, let alone know where to begin. A whole treasure cave's worth of it for sure. So, as they entered through the snowy field, she took a deep breath, and said, I had extra magic lessons with Twilight, and she gives me so much homework that's not even funny. What else? I helped Mom and Dad with their decorations. I visited Grandma Belle in the hospital 3 times. She was asleep for one of them, but I went anyway. What else? Aunt Golden Glitter and my cousins were staying over, so I had to help get the house ready. Then we made cookies with them, we played games, plus I was helping with looking after my niece because she loves hanging out with me. I've been wrapping presents, and there were tons of cards to help write, and I've been helping Mom and Dad mail them. Uh-huh. Have you seen Rarity at all? There weren't many street lamps in the wide fields which lined the outskirts of Ponyville, but Sweetie felt her cheeks blush so bright that she thought maybe they would light the way through the gloom. They had trotted so far from the center of town that they found themselves approaching a certain fashion boutique, which was owned, managed, and lived in by a most especially special pony indeed. Sweetie Belle had been so caught up in trying to remember the events of the past week that she hadn't noticed where Pinkie had been leading her. Sweetie stared at her sister's home. With every snowflake that settled in her mane and tail, her annoyance cooled a little. Then sooner or later, it vanished entirely, blown away in a frozen gust. It was hard. Too hard to remain angry when looking at Rarity's boutique. Her heart flooded with memories of her sister. In fact, Sweetie had never told any pony this, but she considered herself to have 2 hearts. There was the one which beat inside herself, and then a second which beats inside the body of another. A pony who always was there for her, and with whom she felt that she was close as her own parents. She stopped 3 paces short from Rarity's door, hooves too numb for Nicole to continue. I haven't seen her at all, she whispered to Pinkie Pie. There wasn't time. Pinkie smiled at her, but this too was a most un-Pinkie look. Usually hers was an atomic bomb of smiles, which blasted away gloom and misery. This smile on the other hoof was serious, though equally heartfelt. Maybe you should tell her, Or maybe she already knows, and she's been telling all her bestest friends about how super duper proud she is of you. Suddenly, something snapped into place of Sweetie's mind. She remembered the smile that flashed over Pinkie Pie's face earlier, though she hadn't registered it at the time, and realized that her words hadn't been quite so blunt after all. But then, before Sweetie could speak, and before she could never know what's happening, Pinkie produced a Christmas bow from seemingly out of nowhere, big and red. She tied it to Sweetie's mane, and then rang the doorbell. Wait! Sweetie's cry froze Pinkie in her tracks, her hoof an inch from the buzzer. Sweetie gulped again. She whispered, "If I'm going to do this, I should do it myself." With that, Sweetie raised a trembling hoof to the bell. She never got a chance to press it. Right then, the door opened and bathed the two ponies in warm, golden light. And from the light, emerged Rarity herself, who was wrapped in her forelegs tight, so wonderfully, gloriously tight around Sweetie's body. Sweetie's fear was forgotten. All her worries melted away, and she lost herself in the heavenly warmth of her sister's embrace. Tears streamed down her face and strained Rarity's fur, and Sweetie knew that in her heart, she knew the very depths of her soul, and that it didn't matter to Rarity that she was freezing, and that her hose were wet from the snow, and her coat was soaking from the snowflakes falling from the dark sky. "My darling," Rarity whispered in Sweetie's ear, "I must confess, I was sewing in the other room when I heard voices from the doorway. I heard it all." Sweetie didn't know what to say, so she said the first thing which stumbled in her mind. "I didn't get you a present." "I ruined Hearths Warming! I'm sorry!" Rarity pried Sweetie's hooves for her. She kneeled down and brushed Sweetie's cheek with the delicacy born of a lifetime of handling the softest cloths and the most frail fabrics. Rarity said, "Sweetie Belle, it is highly important that you listen to me. You have ruined nothing. Nothing." Sweetie shook her head. But I have. It was too late to get you a real present. There was no time." For a moment, Rarity considered this. Sweetie sniffed and looked up at her. Rarity was golden in the yellow lamplight. She was golden. And beaming. "You know what?" Rarity said. "A cup of tea will be quite lovely right now." "Yes, that would be a splendid idea. I think for a present, tea for both of us. Only if you would keep me company?" Turning to Pinkie, she added, "And tea for our mutual friend here?" Pinkie Pie shook her head. "No thanks," she said, with an infinite brightness. She winked at Sweetie Belle. This was Pinkie's gift, the gift of being left alone with her sister. Pinkie dropped her voice down to a whisper. She spoke as though she was in possession of a fantastic secret. "Anyway, I heard there's a play on tonight. I should get ready." Sweetie smiled, and there was a pause. A warm, snow-filled pause. Then Pinkie Pie bounced away into the night. The two sisters looked at each other. They giggled. Then, hoof in hoof, they walked into the golden light and shut the door behind them on the blue-black coldness. It was Hearths Warming Eve. The wind wailed and the snow fell and fell. And all was well. The end. Hello, Very Pony. Snogwritts here. Hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, be sure to leave a like. And, if you haven't already, subscribe for more readings like this one every Saturday. I hope all of you had a great Hearths Warming and New Year's. I certainly did. Thank you guys so much for your support throughout 2017. I really appreciate it. Now we're here in 2018, and the channel's anniversary is in 2 months. Can't wait to see what I'll make in 2018. Alright, that's it for me. This is Snogwritts, signing out.